All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Najwa, for joining in our pre-meet webinar for Unscripted Track. My name is Sarosh. I am the chair for the Unscripted Track that is going to happen on November 8th at Open's annual forum for Open Silicon Valley at Santa Clara Convention Center. And the purpose for this unscripted session is basically, I'm sure you have been communicated by the team. However, I would like to, do a brief description. So, you guys have been, being the speaker in the past, and I, like myself, I am like a huge fan of yours, and I've always have this struggle to sit down and have a brief talk, talk about your experience, your journey. And as hard as it seems, I'm sure I'm not the only one in this boat, and there are so many people who want to spend some time one-on-one, if not one-on-one, so one to many, sit down on the table and have an open discussion with with the entrepreneurs and leaders, innovators of the valley. That being said, we have this vision in mind. We are providing a platform to the audience so that they can come and have a table talk with the luminaries, and they can have an open conversation for 90 minutes straight. There are no, scripted or no like stage communication. Is just like a table setup where people can come and talk to you about your expertise and, your wonderful journey that people see and admire you along the way. So hope that is okay with you, just the brief the description. And I would like to start with your introduction. Can you tell us briefly who Najwa was, who Najwa is, how she got here, what is the journey? I'm sure it's a long answer, but something that you can describe about yourself.
Sure. Well, thank you so much first for, having me on, and I
Absolutely.
really appreciate the opportunity. Um, my journey is, quite interesting, to be honest. I started out studying pre-med as most people of the South Asian background do, medicine, engineering, law, accounting, finance. And I thought that I was going to be, basically in this track my whole life, right? This is what
Mm,
my life was going to look like. And true to that, I did my undergrad in Oklahoma where I grew up, and then I did my master's in Texas in clinical research. I was really interested in research and helping people, avoid sicknesses, illnesses, and doing prevention. That actually kind of led me to become a podiatrist. I went to school here in the Bay Area at the California School of Podiatric Medicine and then
mhm,
graduated. I did my residency here at the VA Palo Alto Stanford Consortium, where I actually trained as a limb salvage surgeon. So all I do is try to keep people from losing their legs.
okay.
But as I was in the valley, I love to look a certain way. I have this idea of what, a woman should look like and, how she dresses. And it was just something that became a part of my identity. And,
Mhm,
my colleagues who were mostly male would be like, Dr. Javed, like, why are you wearing heels, to the office? And because I understood biomechanical analysis and I understood what the best type of footwear for your body should be, I
mhm.
was able to wear the best shoes that looked beautiful as well as, were comfortable.
Comfortable. Yeah.
And so that led me to really research the design of shoes, not only for women, but also for men, and see that there had been no innovation. And being in
Mm,
Silicon Valley, innovation is key, right? Like people are always
absolutely.
innovating. And it just kind of like planted a seed in my mind that, if we can use technology to change the world in so many different facets, how come medicine is still so archaic, especially footwear? Why is there no innovation? Especially in high heels. And that's where my journey started, to where I developed Emar. Emar is a patented luxury footwear company that has a carbon fiber 1 millimeter arch inlay inside, and it's made in a stiletto. I started researching the design of it in 2018. And then while being a full-time surgeon and raising two kids in Silicon Valley, and then that journey, took me from just being in medicine and
Hmm.
a doctor to actually being like the startup owner and like learning what it meant to have like metrics and KPIs and funding options. And so it was a really amazing journey. And then we actually got introduced to Nordstrom, and we're at Nordstrom's, and it's been a really amazing journey, but completely not a track that I thought I would ever be on.
I mean, within this 1 minute description, I have like tons of questions, and I hope that we will cover the topic that we wanted to cover, as well as the questions that I have for you personally. But these were the part of like the main agenda, anyways. From a medical student, we have always been trained to, like you say, look certain way, educate, get education in certain way, and there are like no going south direction. So being a doctor, I mean, I'm not sure how aware you were when it comes to business mind, because there is a specific mindset that you have to develop a business, let alone thrive it in that direction, right? So you were, you became a doctor, a successful doctor, and became a podiatrist, and I'm sure that you wanted to be in that particular field, because that field is also not very common, right? In podiatry. So let's say you are following up your journey, and then you started your business. How did that two things, get along, and how did you, make that happen while having two young kids, and and thriving in both directions? Shed some light on that.
So I think that's a really great question because people always talk about work-life balance, right?
Yeah.
And for most doctors, we actually don't have a work-life balance. Our jobs are very demanding. There's a lot. And so I guess like for me particularly, I was already used to doing like the 80-hour work week because I was trained in that. And so, being optimized at every moment of my life and being like very efficient with my time is just something that I've always had because I was trained that way. Like, I had to learn those tricks and those tips. When it came to business, I do agree with you. Doctors don't have a good business background. That's not something that they've ever been trained on. They're good
Exactly.
in a lot of other things, but, you know, building like a company or like taking a risk is something that doctors are actually not good at. Most physicians, 90% of them are pretty risk averse, so that's why you don't really see these brilliant, brilliant people, not really leading companies. It's changing now, but for most time, like most doctors were in this field because it's very stable.
Hmm.
So when I actually thought of like, doing the startup, I did do a lot of research, and I think that that's
Okay.
something that really helped me. I went and I talked to all of like the biggest names in the footwear industry, like Tamara Mellon, the founder of Jimmy Choo. I talked to Bianca Gates, the founder of Birdies. I actually set up appointments and meetings with these people, and I did it all through cold emails. Okay, like I had no.
That was my next question. How did you, I mean, this is something people would have a vision that, oh my God, I wish I could do that. So that was my next question, but please carry on. Yeah.
Yeah, for me, like, I mean, what's the worst that could have happened, right? Like, they would have ignored me or they wouldn't have responded. And I did have a lot of that. I did have a lot of
Yeah.
people who
Okay.
didn't respond. But, the people who did respond, I was like, I'm a physician, I'm a foot and ankle surgeon, and I want to understand footwear and I want to understand, why it is the way that it is. And so they were actually very accommodating and they met me and I went to a lot of forums. I went to their office. I went to London to meet people. I traveled everywhere. I went to Paris because I really wanted to understand the industry before I did anything with it. And then once I actually understood the industry, again, that comes from my clinical background. I
Yeah.
really do a lot of research because if you don't test out your idea, you can actually create a problem for yourself because you may think that the idea is really, really great and grand, but until you have the information behind it, you can develop a product that doesn't have a market fit, or you
Mm.
can be a founder that doesn't have a product fit, right? So those were really important questions for me to answer. And so I actually did a lot of YouTubing, a lot of Googling. This is before ChatGPT. So like, I was really in the trenches trying to learn it. And
Mhm.
while I was doing this, I was working full time. And a lot of VCs, when they would talk to me, they would be like, Dr. Javed, if you want to launch this, you have to give up your full-time job.
Yeah.
And I told them, I said, the thing that makes my product so beautiful that what that I'm going to create is because I do my job, like I know what the problem is. Um, the issue that happens when women wear bad heels or bad shoes or men do, and I know how to fix it. So I don't want to leave my job. And so that was an interesting conversation that we can have at a later time. But,
Hmm.
there was a lot of learning. And I had to learn about business very quickly, like very quickly. Like, what is a balance sheet? What is, how much money do you have to put towards the campaign? What are your percentages? Like, what is your profit margin? Like, how much are you going to invest? And, doctors don't really know this. So, like,
Yeah.
I had to learn it. But I will tell you something. I had actually bought out my medical practice a few years prior to getting into EMAR. And when I bought out my medical practice from my doctors, we have a huge group. I had to learn a little bit about business then too. So I think that that also helped me because I wasn't in an institution. I was also already an owner of a medical group. So that helped.
I see. Okay, so the seed was there, and you just have to, like, grow it even more, because so buying something itself is, like, a part of doing a business, a different kind of business. So you had that, but let's say, you are the owner of a practice of your own, and then you're running it, but you want to start it. So did you have, let's see, a mentorship or something that you could rely on? I'm sure there are people like family, your partner, and all that stuff, but people who are, professionals in this, so that they can set you up to be at a certain level or to start from somewhere.
100%,
Yeah.
100%. And I will tell you honestly, I was new to the Bay Area. I moved here and I complete transparency, open was a really great resource. And I'm not just saying that because I'm doing this interview.
I hear you. Yeah.
I'm it's 100% true. Like one of my really dear friends who's also a physician, I had talked to them about this idea and they were like, Najwa, before you do it, there's this huge organization called, Open, and it's Pakistani entrepreneurs and they have a vast number of female entrepreneurs. You should talk to them and see like, how did they build their business? And no joke, like I was able to get connected to some of the best minds in the industry, who are also a part of the charter member group of Open, and
Mhm.
they were my initial mentors, and they actually connected me to non-Pakistani, VCs and founders and executives that actually helped me come up and formulate my idea. So you're right. Before my actual company was built, the ideation of it took about two
Yeah.
years. So for 2
Really?
years, I
Okay.
worked with people, and I really did my due diligence and understanding, like, how
Mhm.
is this going to work?
Amazing. And even after the 2 years of research, put your, everything that you did, your homework, I'm sure there must be a time, or at the initial stage, you maybe not able to get your goal or reach to your goal, what you were expected or anticipated. How did you deal with this situation? Because so many of the startups, or, people who are starting a business, they don't get to see the results or the fruits of what they're expected. And they're just like, so disheartened, and they just do not want to continue anymore. How did you deal with that? Because this is a very important aspect of someone who's starting new business or an early stage of the business.
So I think that that part right there, the rejection is
Yeah.
the most difficult part, right, for a founder's journey.
Hmm.
For most founders, it's something that they're very passionate about. They truly believe that this is going to be a solution.
Yeah.
Most founders don't start a company for money. They truly don't because they know that it's not going to get anywhere. You know what I mean? For most part, because their goal is it's not for that social good or that good of what the problem that they're trying to solve, right? Because entrepreneurship is such a hard road and it's so much rejection that you really have to be really strong in the passion of what you're trying to build, right? So for me, you're right. Like I had a lot of pitfalls and I'll explain very simply. In Silicon Valley, majority of the founders are they have an idea. They talk about their idea. They raise, I don't know,
So million.
$1 or $2. And then they build their product, right? You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it's very different. And they'll be out on golf or whatnot, and they'll be, the deals are completed that way. Funding is done easier,
Mm,
especially like 7 years ago when I was starting the company, right? Like it was very easy, like, and it was heavily male dominated, and it's still heavily male dominated, and it's very tech heavy. So for me, even though my idea was technology based because we were using a 3D modeling system to make a carbon fiber inlay that was going to remodel the way that the foot balances. It was very technically difficult to achieve and needed multiple iterations. Whenever I would present it, it would be presented as a consumer product. And a consumer product, retail products, it's a completely different type of venture, right? That funds it. If they fund it, 98% of retail companies are not funded by venture. But I didn't know that. So in my mind, it was very simple. I was like, I'm a doctor. I'm going to make a footwear that is biomechanically optimized. I have a patent on it. Boom. Like I'm going to get venture funding.
yeah.
How could it
Mm,
not be?
mm-hmm.
And I want to tell you, I met with over 100 VCs in my first round, and all in the retail space because you want to be within your wheelhouse of investment. And I was rejected. It didn't matter that I was at Nordstrom's. It didn't matter that my MVP was tried and tested, that if one person bought the product, we would have four other people buy another product from us.
Mm,
We were doing really well as a company, but because we weren't having super exponential growth, since I only made shoes in small batches because they were
right.
from Italy and our price point
Mm,
was very heavy,
mm-hmm.
the rejection was really, really hard. And I have to tell you, even being a physician and surgeon and having money to be able to invest in it, it's very, very burdensome because you have to invest in the marketing and the campaigns and the imagery and then the inventory and then your staff, right? Like it's a huge
Yeah.
enterprise, right? It's not that easy. Quality control, shipping, logistics. Um, and every time I would get rejected, I would just feel like my heart would just hurt because I wouldn't understand it.
Yeah.
And it was at that moment when I was at my lowest that I realized that, it was because I was approaching my product in a different manner. I thought that this was a tech product, and it's not. It is a consumer-facing product. And so I actually decided to no longer go for VC funding and then actually find, secondary channels of funding. And that's where I actually was able to get funding. So I ended up doing grants that
Okay.
helped me. I did a lot of grant work, and I was used to that because as a statistician, you have to do grants anyways. So I did a lot of grants. I won a lot of awards for our products,
Mm,
and that was able to help me with money. I did a lot of pitching, and I would win the pitch competitions and get money. So I just want people to know that if you have a company that's not tech based, you can still
mm.
find funding. You just have to think of alternative routes for funding.
Right. Okay. I mean, that makes sense. But in terms of, I understand that you think out of the box and then you're like, okay, if this is not working, there might be other ways. But uh, for me, I would say like people, there could be so many aspects that people do not have either able to approach, not confident enough, something that is stopping them to go out and uh try other aspects, something that you would, in general, uh, give some, your thoughts to what they need to do to be able to figure themselves out and not really get disheartened and stop the journey at all.
Yeah, again, I think that that goes back to the fact of what you believe your product is doing, right? Like I just had so much passion behind my product that,
Yeah.
like I was willing to like go through all the heartache because I believed. And it wasn't just my belief, right? Like you actually have to have that validation, right? Like somebody had to validate that your work was good. And the thing that was good for me was that my consumers, like my lists and lists were growing, my sales were increasing. People who would buy the product would send me messages specifically saying like, Dr. Javed, we love your product. And then I actually did one thing. if a product was returned, I would
Mm,
actually set up a Zoom meeting like this with the customer and tell them that I would give them a $50 coupon to
mm,
whatever company that they'd like, um, or a gift card to them so that they could give me feedback on why they returned my product. Because I was really trying to understand the value that I was trying to bring, you know? So I think that when you're a founder and there's so many different things that you have to do, right? Like you have to like
right.
get the funding, then you have to build the product, then you have to sell the product, right? Like there's so many facets. And the only way that you can make it is if you really are 100% vested into like, understanding the goods and the bads. I think where a lot of people actually end up suffering is where when they get negative feedback or when they are rejected, they take it personally.
Yeah.
Won't take it personally. It has not, it's not personal. It's actually really helpful because it allows you to reiterate your product to be even better. So, I actually took more time to talk to the people who would return my product than for those who
Interesting.
would buy it, and we reiterated some of our designs 2 to 3 times to make sure that the fits would be perfect. And there's a
Amazing.
really good book on this. It's called The Mom Test. And one of my mentors, who is a serial entrepreneur, she actually told me, she was a mentor for me and she was also on my board. And she said that, Najwa, if you're going to build something, it doesn't matter what you're going to build on. This book is very helpful and it's called The Mom Test. And I would highly recommend that our listeners today look at that. It's 4 hours on Audible. It's fantastic, especially if you're wanting to launch a company or in the beginning stages.
Awesome. Awesome. Okay, so like I anticipated, we ran out of time and I did not even get to ask the question that I had, let alone what was in the agenda for the meeting. But I will take this time, this 8 minutes. Um, I'm sure there will be a lot of people that could come and that would approach you and have like tons of questions regarding your practice, your the mobility within your medical field and the entrepreneurship. Would you be I mean willing to, is there any way they can have the mentorship access to you, and if they so that we can pitch in that Najwa here is, she's available and she provides the mentorship. So if you want mentorship for your business, come talk to her. Is this something you would be open to?
Of course, yeah. I've always been open to, sharing my insights. If I can help somebody gain knowledge,
Absolutely.
I would love to help them. And, you can always reach out to me. I'm pretty good at responding back to people, regardless of how busy I am. But,
Right.
one-on-one time is the best, and I'm happy to
Yeah.
do that.
Cool. And one last thing before we leave, what is the advice you would give to young professionals when it comes to, of course, a study or starting a business or maybe both, like having a balance? What would you suggest to the young professionals, women and men, especially, regarding this industry?
That's a great question. And so, what I would tell young, especially young,
Students.
students and kids or somebody who's thinking about, doing, a passion project while
Yeah.
also working or studying simultaneously, I tell them that, sometimes the risk of taking that step is so scary that most people don't take it. But, my husband had told me something really great when I first mentioned this to him because I was like, this is such a wild idea. And he was like, well, what's the worst that can happen, right? Like, what's the worst that can happen? Either you try it and you do good, or you don't try it and you regret it, right? And even if you get a no, there's nothing that's worse. Like, it's fine. That being said, you should always try to take that step, But that being said, if you have a stable 9 to 5, do that 9 to 5 because your passion, before it becomes successful, you need to have money to sustain your life.
That is the key.
You
Yeah.
have to, you cannot do something out of desperation. I see a lot of times people have an idea and then they go full-fledged into that idea, but they don't know how that's going to uh,
Wow.
pan out. And
Hmm.
at that time, then they're doing not a passion project, they're doing a desperation project. They're desperate to be able to have somebody give them money, somebody take it, and that's where you suffer. Right. So I always tell people it's great. Like even the young students that I mentor, the young professionals that I mentor, I tell them, do your 9 to 5 and do it good. When you have stability and income in your bank account, then you can do your passion project on the side. And I did that, and I
Hmm.
continued to do it until this year, where we are now in the midst of selling EMAR because it's done really well. And now, because of all of my learnings, now I'm a consultant, I'm a board advisor to a lot of companies in the footwear industry and health tech, and now I do so much as an advisor. So like your life can take you in so many places, but just be patient and you can have it all, just not all at once.
All at once. Okay. I mean, there cannot be a better summary of this overall call. I really am grateful that I was able to talk to you even for a brief moment. I'm looking forward to meet you on November 8th. Hopefully that you will arrive, ahead. I mean, so the time for the unscripted is from 4 to 5:30. I understand that it's like literally the end of the day, but hope to see you before that, during the rest of the panels and everything in between. So thank you so much, Najwa, and I'm looking forward to meet you on November 8th.
Yes, I'm really happy. I will be there early that day, supporting everybody on the panel, and I
Awesome.
will be excited to see you. Thank you so much for this opportunity today.
Thank you. You have a good rest of the night.
You too.
Have a
Thank
good
you.
day. Bye.